the safety committee meeting this evening. In addition to myself, and in attendance of Mr. McCann and Ms. Stout from the committee, Mr. Hainham and Mr. Richardson online. Members of administration are in attendance, Mr. Aller, Chief Schnorr, Mayor Stow, Mrs. Brenning, Mr. Stanford, Ms. Bigelow, and Mr. Sylvania is helping us out with the IT as we greatly appreciate that. So this meeting is intended, as all of you probably know, to inform members of the committee and other members of council about the upcoming administration, their thoughts and recommendations on the 911 consolidation and what operational changes the administration is recommending to us going forward in 2021 and into the future. Probably about a week or so ago, Mr. Aller sent out a dispatch memo regarding the consolidation with a spreadsheet. It was also attached. Members of council sent a number of questions in, which Mr. Aller and the chief worked on to try to respond to. So unless there's comments from members of council, I'll throw this to Mr. Aller and the chief to start this through the discussion and kind of review our alternatives.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to kind of rehash how we got here, the county voted to move forward with a consolidation of the 911 dispatch operations. That was done through the formation of the COG, the Council of Governments, which this city was represented, by the mayor of White House, which was who city council voted as to be their representative. Hard to imagine, but it's been a year ago since that occurred. So as part of that consolidation, the initial consolidation was thought to occur in about July of next year. Because of COVID and all of the delays and inability to meet and that kind of stuff with the pandemic, that's been put off until likely September or fourth quarter of next year, 2021. When that occurs, our dispatch center, as it currently says, will basically cease to exist. But we do have services that our current dispatch staff provides at this time, as well as services that we would like to switch from our sworn staff to our civilian. We have them titled record clerks for now. What that title is going to be for certain, we don't know, but that's what we refer to so far. Some of the things in the memo, some of the things that the dispatchers currently perform are there as part of the memo. I handed out copies here. I sent them email. So hopefully Mr. Hainham and Mr. Richardson have access to them. Obviously, front window assistance. Somebody walks in the building. They're usually the first people that someone might see that walks in. They do perform some video redaction services. As you can imagine, we don't have, currently we have just the car cameras. And so with the addition of body cameras, that process itself is going to grow a great degree, as evidenced by some things that we've seen already. Some subpoena processing that they do, weekly media reports that they prepare every week. Some records keeping, although that task will be increased a pretty large share. And then any audit releases and adoption, and of course monthly statistic reports. Those are things that our staff does already, that if we didn't keep somebody on, we would lose the staff that currently does those things. In addition, we have several things that our sworn staff do, such as some of them are listed there, and that's a partial list, but we didn't want to include each and everything that is going to get done, but included the ones that we think are going to be larger items and the more time-consuming things and important things. Property room management, running background reports, training records, DARE training assistance, special event coordination. I think this year our count is obviously way down, but I think last year we had over 50 event rooms.
50 that total, and then 27 we actually had to task officers and schedule them to work in some kind of capacity with that.
So that, and as you can imagine, Mr. Fry, in your case, you're associated with the fireworks. Just that alone and coordinating the traffic control, if we have to have security and things of that nature, those are time-consuming tasks. Case file maintenance, safety city preparation, and then of course grant filing, which we're Chief Schnorr has tried to increase our efforts in that arena with mixed success. We've received some grants and unfortunately have been unsuccessful in some others. But if there's grant funds out there, we certainly want to be pursuing them more aggressively. So with these proposed changes, we'll be able to switch those duties from the sworn officers to that civilian staff and release those sworn staff to be able to be on the road, in the road patrols, doing either traffic control type activities or out in the community and being in the neighborhoods and or the business community and being able to be seen and be seen by both the residents that want to know that they've got police protection, and also anybody that may be here to do bad things or ill things to our community, to see that our police officers are out and about and their window of opportunity is maybe not as great as what they thought, and maybe they'll rethink some things. Based on the time, that we believe is going to be spent on these tasks, it is our recommendation, and I'll run through the spreadsheet here in a little bit after this recommendation. But it's our recommendation that we move forward with staff of 3 records clerks, staff the police department from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We believe that this gives us the ability to complete the tasks that we plan to transfer to those positions, and at the same time provide the customer service aspect of it, if you will, of people coming to the station. And that's what we've been trying to weigh and try to balance is being able to get everything done that we want to get done with those staff members, but also make sure that if somebody walks into that front door, that we have somebody here as much as we possibly can. You never know when something's going to happen, but you try to hit it during the hours that we have the most traffic coming to that door. Taking a look at the financial comparison, we took a look at, actually we took a look at several different options. These are 3 options that we provided to you so that you can see what it means from a financial standpoint. At the top, in the top of that of the page, option 1 is 5 days a week, having the front lobby open, if you will, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with 3 person staff. On an annual basis, that will be a cost of approximately $265,540. And in 2021, because we're only going to be looking at these charges for 1 quarter, that cost is for 2021 is then $66,000 of change. The second option that we took a look at was 5 days from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. or basically midnight. So 8 a.m. to midnight, we would have 4 persons on staff, 2 on a first shift, if you will, and 2 on a second shift. We would still be unstaffed between midnight and 8 a.m. Those costs on an annual basis are about $340,000, and then of course the single quarter charge there. And then we looked at it saying, okay, if we put somebody in the building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how many staff would we need to do that? And what's the cost to do that? That would be a 6-person staff, because you have to cover, obviously, you have to cover all 3 shifts, and then vacations and downtime and things like that. We could do it with a 6-person staff. The cost for that would be $527,480, and then the 1 quarter charge. So we took a look at those 3 options, and we used some assumptions. With the county dispatch consolidation, they have a prorated, not prorated, but a graduated scale, where in 2021, you're going to pay a certain amount. In our case, they're estimating that to be about $480,000. If we had done the full year of 2021, it would have been $480,000. Because we're only going to be able to be doing 1 quarter, that's going to be basically about a fourth of that, $121,000. If you take that county fee in option 1, if you take that cost across, you can see that that fee reduced. 2022, it'd be $339,000 round numbers. 23, $305,000, and then 2024 and beyond, it will be $292,000, $292,100. None of these figures in this table account for any perceived or programmed salary increases or anything like that. They're today's dollars. But that gradual reduction of our fee from the county correlates to a gradual increase in the fees for the communities that hadn't been paying anything. The county had indicated that those entities that hadn't been paying anything, they wanted to give them some time to get their fees worked into their budget on a total basis. And so there was a 4-year step, if you will, for that to occur.
I think politically, I think council needs to know that is not Sylvania Township. Sylvania Township has been paying for their own dispatching. It is the smaller cities, Waterville, White House, and many of the smaller townships that we will be subsidizing for those years with their lower rates and our higher rate.
Yes.
That's just the way it is. And Kevin, council won't understand this comment, but I think Lucas County should be willing to do the same for our increase in sewer charges that they're proposing as a result of the increased usage. It's the same logic. They should be subsidizing us. I know that that's a reach, but thought I'd bring it up.
Sure. Definitely worth the conversation. And you can see the county fee, you can see if you go down through the 3 options, those numbers stay the same throughout the 3 options because the county is, we will pay that graduated fee no matter what. The next phase, the next line is the city operations. That is maintaining our dispatching service through the 3 quarters. And then also the 4th quarter fee that you see up above 2021 that will be paying the county for their services. So that's 3 quarters of actual city operations, plus 4th quarter fee that will be paying to Lucas County. During the first 3 quarters of the year, we'll also have the agreement that council just approved, that I believe at the last meeting, for the assistance that we'll be receiving from Sylvania Township. That's $3,500 a month. So that'll total about $31,500 for the 9 months. We will have an after-hours call service one of the things that our dispatchers has done is, let's say somebody was driving down the street, saw water bubbling out of the ground, or someone came home from work and they had a sewer plug. They would call the non-emergency phone numbers that our dispatch has. Our dispatchers would take that call, and then they would get a hold of our water department or sewer department and get them out to respond to that call. We won't have that because our dispatchers won't be here. So we'll have an answering service. That's actually extremely, it's only about $200 a month for that. So we'll have that expense on top of it. If you take a look at the total cost, that takes into account everything that we believe we can think of. We've got everything included in there. We've taken some savings. We'll have, I think we mentioned at the last meeting, we used to have 6 dispatchers. One of our dispatchers left and went to Perrysburg. So we're only going to have 5 dispatchers on for the remainder of time that we have the dispatch office. So we've adjusted our city operations costs for only having 5 dispatchers instead of 6. We've adjusted it that we're only going to be in operation for 3 of the 4 quarters. We believe that we have everything accounted for, even down to the $2,400 for the answering service. If you take a look at that, if you take a look at a 3-person operation, 8A to 8P, our total cost is going to be just in excess of $616,000. And if you take a look at our last 3 actual operating expenses for our dispatch center, the 3-year average for that is $631,550. So during the first year, we would actually see a decrease of about just over $15,000. That's much different than the savings the county was projecting for the communities, because they were taking strictly a cost, assuming that you can eliminate all of your dispatching staff. And so you save that amount in your budget, you pay them the $292,000, and all of that is savings. That's just not reality. You have to have somebody in the building doing some of the things that the dispatchers have done already in the past. And in our case, which is not the case in the other police departments, but in our case, being able to get some of those duties away from the sworn staff that they've been doing. That's pretty rare. We're essentially the only one in the area that does that, just because our dispatching staff has been so small and so lean. So if you take a look, if you go out through the years, and that won't run through all the numbers, but the first option, which is the one that we're recommending, by the time we get out to 2024, when all of the fees will be settled with everybody, we'll have the county fee of $292,000. That 3-person staff will cost us $265,540, as indicated above, and we will have a savings of approximately $71,000 a year with that 3-person staff. If there was a desire to go to 4 persons, or there was a desire to have the office here staffed for more hours than the 8A to 8P, then that would result in, ultimately at the end of the 4-year period, that would result in an additional cost of $3,000. So we go from a savings of over $71,000 to an additional expense of about $3,000 over what our current budget is right now. And then, of course, we go to option 3, where we've got it staffed 24/7. We've got 6-person staff. That would actually cost us almost $163,000 more than what we're currently spending to staff our dispatching office. That kind of gives you an idea of where we're at cost-wise when this switch comes into place in September. And we'll also give you an idea of The 3-person staff is the staff. Part of the reason that is our recommendation is because we believe that the duties that we're asking that 3-person staff to do, we believe that the duties we're going to be asking our staff to do can be accomplished and handled with a 3-person staff. It will be a busy 3-person staff. We are putting a lot into these positions. And right now, we have a fairly uncertain, the new redaction services, the new redaction requirements have the potential to add a large workload into the staff. There are some other area departments that are keeping one of their staff members strictly for redaction because of what they're anticipating the time commitment to be that. Because it's available, what the chief has seen already in some trials that we've run and what other departments are seeing is that because it's available, more and more people are asking for those videos. And because as soon as they're asked for, then the redaction services have to kick in. There are things that can't be shown. There are things that shouldn't be shown. And so those are, that is, for us, is kind of an unknown to some degree, but we know that it's definitely going to increase as far as the time commitment and the demand on our position. We have proposed the 3-person department, partly in thought that we believe we can get everything accomplished with the 3-person, but if we see that 3-person staff just isn't going to be able to fulfill all of those duties, we're not going to be able to get everything transferred to them that we need, or perhaps that the redaction services that we talked about is a full-time person. We just don't have that person available for anything else. I would feel more comfortable coming to council and saying, I need to add a staff person in this department. Here's why, explain the situation and move forward in that manner versus going with a 4-person office, realizing that the demand just isn't there and we could have had an increased savings over what we I think it's much better to start small and add if we find that we need to versus add that 4th position and then find out that we really didn't need that. And I have this is kind of an unknown for us. We know the duties that we're passing. We have a pretty good idea of what our sworn staff spends on those duties. So we're fairly comfortable in those. As I indicated, we do have 3 positions that we're proposing here that will be full. There won't be much downtime. But we still believe that's the way to go and then move from there should we have to. Some of the questions that have been proposed, what if any additional operational duties would be covered by the record clerks if we went from 3 to 4 people? The duties would essentially remain the same. We've packed everything into these 3 positions. So if we went to 4 people, the duties really wouldn't change too much, but it just, those duties would be spread among 4 people. As I indicated, we've had a lot of discussion on how many employees to keep on staff after the consolidation. And it's our desire to minimize those staffing levels in order to realize whatever cost savings we might be able to. If we feel that we need to come back and we need that 4th employee, I will come back with justification for that 4th employee. But hopefully we'll be able to continue as a 3-person staff. Second question, Mr. Fry, I think was kind of answered in the first one. So I'll leave that go at that. Presumably, if we decided to go with 6 people, one thing that would occur is a 24/7 coverage. Other than that, what additional duties or responsibilities would be met by increasing from 4 to 6 people? The duties were essentially the same thing. The duties would remain the same, be split among 6 employees. At that point, we may take a look. Maybe there's some other things in the city that we'd be able to put into those roles, but that's a pretty difficult thing to do when you're talking police services and then service type services. So that sometimes doesn't work. We wouldn't need the answering service because we'd have somebody here, so that would be something that we could eliminate. Some things that occur, they don't occur that often, that we are having to make arrangements for is if there's a bond needed through the court. Typically, it's if the state patrolman brings somebody in and they need to be bonded. That will have to be done. We're having to make different arrangements for that. We wouldn't have to make those arrangements if we were staffed 24/7. So those kinds of things. There are some things that would change, but not anything that gets done on a repeated level, a high repeated level. So, one other thing that we discussed when concerning the countywide dispatchers and non-emergency calls. That will be that. This is a big, it depends. I put it in my answer. It depends on what that call is and what number the person calls. We currently have what's considered an emergency number to dispatch, which is our 8900 number. And then we got 8902 and 8903, which are non-emergency numbers. Some of our citizens know those numbers and know that they can get a dispatcher right now. Those numbers will be transferred. The emergency number will be transferred down to the county dispatch. What we will have to do is to train those people that are used to calling our dispatchers outside of the 911 system, because they know they can get a friendly voice and they know they can get a friendly person. We're going to have to train them that if you want a policeman to respond, you have to call the 8900. You have to call the emergency service. Because what we don't want somebody to do is if they call in here and get our records clerks that are doing other duties, and we find out that it is an emergency situation, we're going to have to transfer it down to the emergency station because we won't have the ability to call our officers anymore. So we don't want them to call here for us to transfer it down there, and we've lost, 30 seconds or more during that conversation. So there is going to be some education that we'll have to do with those types of calls. If it's a non-emergency call and we're staffed here, then we'll be able to take those and get them to wherever they need to go. If it's after hours, we'll be able to get those to wherever it wants to go. But we want to try to get our citizens trained so that only the emergency calls are going downtown. Now, if calls end up downtown that are non-emergency, they will take them and they'll get them to us as appropriate. But we don't want every call that goes downtown is an incident, and that is going to determine how much we pay for that service to the county in the future. If it's not an emergency service that we don't need that emergency dispatching service, we don't want the call going down there because then we're paying for something that we didn't really need. So that's a big if. There's going to be a pretty big education component to this, I think. That's something that we'll have to work through both on our end and on the county's end on how to make sure that those get together properly. If we make the shift of duties from sworn officers to records clerks, a portion of the officer's time would then be moved to increase community presence. Doesn't have to be an exact figure, but 10 hours, 20 hours. Based on some estimates that the chief and the captains have put together on what we spend on some of these functions already, we're anticipating that we're going to be able to free up more than 60 hours a week of our sworn officers' time. So that's 60 hours a week per week of additional time that we've got an additional sworn officer on the road, that we've got an additional sworn officer being able to spend with the business community, that we've got additional sworn officer in the neighborhoods interacting with kids and or residents. So that is in my opinion, that's a big plus to this consolidation. I think our sworn staff is what we want them on the road. We don't want them in this building doing paperwork. And so I think that's a big plus for us. You asked about training. Is there going to be any training needed for these things? There will be. Property room management, redaction, the state requirements in the state law as far as redaction is concerned. The leads system, things of that nature will be additional training that our staff will have to take. It's part of the training budget. We actually increased the training budget this year. So some of these things are planned, but yes, there will definitely be additional training. How do other forces of a similar size or larger handle the property room case file maintenance? We're not aware of another area department, I don't want to say the whole state, another area department that uses sworn staff. Civilian staff handle those duties and all of the other police departments in the area. So we have been, from a dispatching service, we have the 6 staff members. We have been extremely lean in that area for a long time. The smallest department, other dispatch department is 10 employees, and that office has 5 civilian employees in addition to those dispatchers. So we've been operating extremely lean. These changes have been something that we had talked about for several years. There was a discussion I had with Chief Rodas when he was here. When Chief Schnorr came in, it was one of the things that he wanted to, it was like in his top 10 or 20 things that he wanted to accomplish was to try to get some of these duties switched to civilian staff so that he could utilize that sworn staff. So, okay, I'm long-winded tonight. A lot of talk from me, but willing to answer questions, or if you have any questions on, individual duties or something like that, the chief is here as well. So I apologize if I rambled, but that was long.
Well, actually, Mr. Allen, that was very informative for myself, and I imagine other members of council and members of the committee. So we appreciate that and all the work and effort that the administration, yourself, Chief Schnorr, and others have put into this. It's obviously something you've given a lot of thought to. I have some questions, but I'll defer those to other members of the committee for any follow-up questions, because I already asked a bunch of meeting. So any other questions from committee members? Mr. McCann. I'm up for this now.
Talking about how we're estimating maybe 60 more hours of office time will be freed up. I'm just curious what the pay difference is between an officer versus one of these little office clerks. Just because it's not as a part of these numbers, but in a way that's another value that we could take into account with these numbers.
Sure.
To make the decision.
Sure. Yeah, we will be. We've done some research into what the other departments, other area departments are paying their records clerks, and we're anticipating the numbers that we presented to you. We are assuming a pay rate in the neighborhood of about $26. Our sworn staff, our sergeants are probably
It's a range of about $40 to $44 an hour, depending on their longevity and years of service. These extra duties that we have, typically when you get promoted to sergeant, you take on additional responsibilities, and that's where a lot of these have come from over the years. And not having civilian staff, as many other departments have, developed over the years, we have always put that on our administrators. But they're they're part of my administrative team, but they're the people that work the road patrol shifts. Or they're like the Sergeant Patrick Community Affairs. So time that she would be out in the school with her staff and everything, she's taking care of just to give you an example, that our towed and abandoned and seized vehicles. So she has to do reports, and there's a lot of paperwork gets processed at the state level. So you're looking at a $44 an hour, probably average, compared to a $26 an hour.
Yeah, that's another benefit in here that.
Yeah.
that we had.
Yeah, that's true.
And then with the 3-person option, I'm assuming that takes into account if one person wants to call in sick, or if there's someone who has to take a leave of absence for a while.
Yeah, those costs, we have overtime, some assumed overtime costs built into that annual cost figure. If somebody ends up having extended leave, we may end up having that number being a little higher. But we do have it set up to where if our assumption for this is that we would have 2 people regularly scheduled at 8 to 4, and then 1 person scheduled 12 to 8. Our assumption is that on known absences, that we would transfer one of those 8 to 4 employees to the 12 to 8 shift. And then during someone gets sick that day, then we would just have to cover those last 4 hours.
I think that covers my questions.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. My question is for the recommendation for the 3-staff crew. Are they existing employees today?
It would be our recommendation that we offer those positions to the dispatch officers, my apologies, to the dispatch staff. We would anticipate that we would have those people interested in the positions.
And this is getting into economics, but I'm sure you're shocked by me asking about economic questions, but they understand that it may not be at the same pay rate?
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. McKenna, go ahead. A few other questions. The assumptions for the county fee assume almost all the emergency, but almost all the calls would remain inside the county bucket, correct? The emergency and the non-emergency, correct? So if we swap over some non-emergency calls, that fee may go down slightly, but not materially. Correct. And you'd indicated that 60 hours a week approximately, 60 hours a week of additional officer or on patrol time or other community activities and the like that are being consumed now. The $44 an hour that the chief mentioned, that's fully loaded?
Yes.
So effectively that's the equivalent of $110,000 a year worth of value if we were going to actually go out and hire, assuming we could hire 1.5 officers. That's it. It's not a cash benefit, but it's a benefit to the community in a different way, as Ms. Stow was indicating a bit ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's correct. And the new redaction services, if that starts to become a much more significant issue or thing that we have to address as a community based upon, sunshine laws and those types of things and requests from the public, we were going to see that anyways, right?
Correct.
And what were we going to do with that body camera redaction requirement without this change?
We would have been coming
and asked to bring somebody on board.
Yes.
Okay, so so you're looking at just pure cash flows here, but there's deferred costs that we're avoiding. Is that a fair assessment?
That's good.
Okay. Thank you. That handles my questions. Any other members of council? Mr. Richardson? Ms. Hanem, Mrs. Capolini, who has also joined us. Any additional questions?
I have a question about, tell me about the current call volume between 8 and midnight and on Saturdays. The non-emergency call volume, particularly, later from 8 to midnight and Saturdays. A lot of people work. Anyway.
The call volume, I will need to get back to Mr. Hanem on that. One thing that I asked the chief to take a look at it, and he provided actually dispatch staff had to run back through the records. One of the things that I had to take a look at was how many visits to the lobby or to the police building do we get on a regular basis. And that wasn't something that we had tracked in the past, but we took 2020 data, and we took the 3 months before everything was shut down because of COVID, and we've taken the 2 most recent months when things got somewhat back to normal. Obviously, they're not back to 100% normal. So we took a look at 5 months of data. During that time, we had 52 visits to the police building during the hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. during Monday through Friday. 8 p.m. and on and weekends during that same 5-month period, we had 5 visits. So that also made us feel more comfortable with the 8 scenario. Should somebody need to come to the station. I don't have call volume as I'm standing here, Mr. Hanem, but I can get that.
So we don't have a lot of Saturday traffic or late evening traffic. I mean, my primary concern is, meeting the needs of our constituents, and if that's a relatively marginal impact going just 8 to 8, that makes it easier. And honestly, going 8 to 12, 5 days a week, I really was curious about what happens on Saturdays.
Yeah. It's really pretty minimal. I think everybody kind of understands. It's the weekend and they're not there. People coming to the station at those times, either it could be something like a domestic violence situation. That could be something that's occurring, but it seems more of those are looking for reports. They're looking for a police report, on an accident that they may have had a couple weeks ago or something like that. And one of my concern, the chief's concern was that domestic violence incident, if that were to occur, we don't have anybody at the station. But it's really, with the exception that they're going to get stopped at a door, it's really no different than the situation we have today if somebody were to come to the station for that. Because if somebody comes to the station today and running away from a domestic violence situation, they're going to get to the station and nobody's here. We don't have police officers here. So there's not going to be any. Now, our dispatchers will read the situation. A person will run in, and our dispatchers will get it taken care of. Now what's going to happen is that person will run in, they'll push the button that's it at the entrance of the lobby, and that's going to send an immediate call to the dispatch center downtown and handle it in that manner. So time-wise, there's really not that much of a difference between our current operation and what would take place if that were to occur with nobody here. So it's just a little different.
I'm sorry.
No, that's,
Would there be any video assessment of somebody pushing the button in the middle of the night?
those are one of the things that we're taking a look at. We're taking a look at what our video needs are. We're taking a look at, do we need to set up a different protective, maybe is there some way that we can better protect somebody that might need that when they get here? Those are the kinds of things that we're still taking a look at and may have to make some modifications.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'd be interested, going forward. I think your 3-person recommendation is obvious. I don't think I can't imagine council overriding your sense of that, but I certainly would like to get a report in early 2022 on how things are going so that we can assess whether we need to step it up. And I know it's a long way off, but just if you'd stick that in your calendar, I'd appreciate it.
Will do.
Mr. Richardson or Mrs. Cavalini, do you have any questions? Okay.
Mr. Allen, considering we said we're going to be charged per call, is that button near the entrance, is that clearly labeled as an emergency call so that when people are coming to get to the building, they're putting that on accident trying to get in?
That's what we'll have to modify. Yeah, that's one of the modifications that we were talking about. It's funny to kind of walk through it. 9 years, and all of a sudden now I walk into the building. It's like, oh, we're going to have to change that, and I'm sure that she's doing the same thing. So those are the kind of things that we're still we're working through. We have a local architect on contract on what modifications need to be done to secure this building a little better, and so those are the kind of things that we're looking at.
So we don't have a 6-year-old pushing the button, we get it built $10 at a time.
Yep.
One more question. Have you guys considered whether or not it would be worthwhile to have some sort of lock safe area? I don't know if the vestibule gets turned into a lock safe zone. So when these off hours happen, if someone comes here to try to find some sort of safe zone, that they're able to enter some place that they won't freeze or something else, and they can close the door behind them so that someone's chasing them. Is that
that's actually one of the things that we have the architect taking a look at. Is it a safe room, so to speak, or is it something just as simple that, when they push that button to call the dispatcher, that the outside door slams shut at the same time and keeps that locks it. So it's something like that.
Any other questions from members of council? So, Mayor, going forward, nothing, and this is more informational, correct? So we don't really need to do anything. Is any members on this, or is there a thought process that we would have a motion to approve this recommendation from administration?
The intent of tonight's meeting was to be informational. However, we have existing employees next door that would be wanting an answer before the end of the year about what their futures hold. So I would not expect an answer or an inclination tonight, but I would think that before the end of the year, and a decision by council whether to accept the safety director's recommendation or one of the other options would be in order.
And Mayor, in your mind, but in the budget is option 1, correct? In the proposed budget?
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So that would take the form of a resolution, or in regards to acceptance of the administration's recommendation, what would that look like?
we would have to carry ordinance to create the positions and change the organizational structure of the
Leslie, I can't hear you.
Sorry. I would have to prepare legislation and ordinance to create the positions and to change the organizational structure of the police department and to provide for the salaries for those employees.
So that would be separate from the ordinances that we would typically do to fund the budget, correct?
Correct. Yep. That when we, for instance, the most recent positions that council created that and approved were the captains, police captain positions, would take a similar form as that. We would change the organizational structure and then establish the salary.
Okay.
Obviously, this doesn't happen until the fourth quarter.
Right.
But I think for planning purposes and for the planning of our current 5 dispatcher employees, the decision by the end of the year or early after the start of the new year is the right approach to take.
Yeah. Given that Mrs. Westfall is chair of the committee is here, if we've got that much time, I'm perfectly comfortable with the administration's recommendation. Can't speak obviously for other members of the committee, but
I am as well.
Yeah, so I think we've got a sense of comfort that obviously, as always, you guys at the administration have done a nice job putting your due diligence together and going through this process. It makes sense, but if we have the time, I would prefer to wait for Mrs. Westfall to make the recommendation for legislation to create these new positions to be advanced.
Would you be comfortable with you're going to make a report to City Council tonight about this safety committee meeting?
Correct.
And perhaps we put on the agenda for our next meeting in 2 weeks this same issue for any follow-up questions or concerns. And at that meeting, Mrs. Westfall could call for the appropriate legislation to be prepared. Does that sound like a reasonable schedule?
I'm perfectly fine with that, Mayor. Is that sufficient time for administration to? Okay, as long, yeah, then I think that's a wonderful solution.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I think we want to let our 3 people know that we want them to stick around.
Yeah, one last question I do have that just popped in my mind. Do we have a thought process on how you mentioned, Mr. Aller, about educating the public for the calls?
Mm-hmm.
I know we're a long way out from that, but 9 months has a tendency to go pretty quickly. Are we starting to formulate a plan on how we roll that out to the public to make them aware?
Yeah, I've actually pulled some information already from Toledo's 411 system. They've really kind of done the same thing with that 411 in trying to get the non-emergency calls. The 911 center was taking calls on, my water bill doubled and that kind of stuff. That's not what you want 911 center doing. So they did a big push to try to get those kinds of calls from the 911 center into the 411 information program. So, we'll have some flyers, we'll have some posts on our Facebook and social media. We'll have some bill inserts, that kind of stuff. Maybe do some things with the kids in our school programs. Well, that's kind of tough nowadays, but we're trying to do what we can. Yeah. I've got some ideas. I've taken a look at what some other communities have done with similar problems. Okay, so we have
time. Do we have time to get something in the calendar?
Yes, that's a possibility. Yeah. Yep. That's a good idea. Yeah, no concrete plan or no plan has started to be formulated, but we've been pulling.
Okay, great. Any final questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the safety committee meeting. Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. We're adjourned at 7:25 and Chief Graham, welcome.